Hi, everyone. We are back with another episode of Go Teen Writers Live. We have loved getting your questions. We have loved seeing the interaction on the Friday prompts, so keep it up. And this week we have a question from someone named Danielle, and Jill is going to read it for us.
All right, Danielle writes to us. I am in rough draft stage of my novel, and since my plot has turned out differently than I planned, so has the character arc for my main character. While the plot moves itself along pretty well, my character is flat and inconsistent. Just sort of along for the ride. Is there a good way to keep developing a character when your plot so totally deviates from what you originally planned? Is this best done during a rough draft, or should I wait until revisions to worry about my character? What do you guys think, Steph?
Well, there's a lot to unpack in there. So I think I'll start with kind of the way that plot and character work together or don't work together. So I have noticed with my own books that when my plot takes off in a different direction than I originally planned, that a lot of times my book starts reading like this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened, and so on. When it starts reading more like a checklist of scenes. And what we really want is for it to read like this happens, and so this happens, and so this happens. We want it to be building on itself. We want it to have a logical progression. So for me, when that happens, I realize that my character has, like, I've almost separated the character motivation from what's happening in the plot. And we don't want that. We want the character motivation to be driving the plot. So to me, it almost sounds like the character doesn't have a sufficient reason to be on this journey, almost like they could bail and they're not, that the plot is just carrying them along.
Yeah, when I think of this question, I'm actually reminded of the first book I ever wrote. And the feedback I got was that this needs to be her story. And I think you start to learn as you go through this enough that the things you're letting your character observe, and I think this was mentioned in the question, the things you're letting your character observe, consider the possibility that those actions, those things must be happening to your main character. So there's no reason your character needs to be set in stone. Just because it's how you originally envisioned your character does not mean you can't do a little discovery writing as you go along and find out, okay, well, this has changed a bit for me. I like this plot, but what does my character have anything to do with it? And then you put your character in the middle of the action, make those things happen to her, not just something she's observing, turn them around and make them happen to her, and kind of see where your plot goes from there. Like Steph said, if it's not about your main character, you either have the wrong main character or you've got to make some adjustments to your plot and character relationship. I mean, that was my initial thought on that topic. What do you think, Jill?
Well, I think putting it in my head and the way I write and the genre I write might not work for everybody, but this is what I'm thinking. When it happens to me, I might have a character and the character fits in that plot, but it might not be coming through very well. And that's usually for me because I don't know my character very well yet. And so I'm having a really hard time integrating them into that plot in a realistic way. They're just kind of there. And they might be actually the one who's doing all the things that need to be done. They might be there. They might be the person, but they're not coming through. What I do, I mean, you'd asked, is it better to wait for revisions or do it during the rough draft? I'm a firm believer in getting that rough draft written as fast as you can, so you know what your story is. And so I would say, don't stop to try to. You might have to stop and think about your character. But I wouldn't start rewriting things until the end. So you could figure out, you know what, I need to know some backstory about my character. I need to think about this person some more and figure out who they are. You can take time to do that, and you might even do some free writing to figure out that. Yeah. And then you can keep going forward from that point and write the book with what you've learned about your character and write it new, and it won't match the front. It's a messy book, but that's okay. Give yourself permission to stink. You're writing a rough draft. And once you get to the end, then you're going to know what you need to go back and change, and you're going to have new ideas about how you can fix that once you have a whole book done. But if you get stuck in rewriting and trying to make everything perfect as you go, you're probably going to end up frustrated and so I don't know. Everybody's different, so maybe that process doesn't work for everybody, but that's my process.
Yeah, I would agree. I tend to be in the camp of just get that first draft done and then go back through. But I do think it's a good point that it sounds like it's time to pause where you are and figure out some character stuff, because otherwise you're just going to be writing stuff that you're going to have to cut or change quite a bit. So a few suggestions for things that you could nail down. I would ask yourself, why does the character have to be on the journey? Like, why is he or she so invested? What do they lose if they don't do this, if they don't follow this path? What's another way that's asked sometimes is, what's at stake? Because if we don't have high enough stakes, then your character is not going to want to go on their journey. They're not going to want to change. So we need to make sure that the stakes are there. Another question that you might consider asking yourself is, what is your character's lie? What is their misbelief? What is something that has wounded them in the past that they are still trying to get over? That is something that colors our worldview. If you think about things that from your childhood or from your adolescence that have stuck with you, and it frames decisions that you make. The same is true for your character. So that can be a really good way to show their thought process and their filter for the world around them. So those are two questions that I would maybe stop what you're doing, address those, and then maybe make notes for changes you want to make in the beginning, but then push through with the changes from here on out.
Yeah,
Shannon, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And while you were talking, I was reminded of, I did a blog post maybe it wasn't too long ago on story problems. And it was a prompt. And so you guys can go find that exercise if you're interested. But my thought is this: perhaps it's possible that you have answered your story problem too early. It's possible that you have solved the problem and now your character, for whatever reason, is still floundering around. And it is okay for your character's motivation, your character's problem to change as your story develops. But you might need to think a little bit about whether or not you should be answering that question early on. Why is your like Steph asked, why is your character on this journey? And if you answer that question in the first couple of chapters, in the first 1/3 of your book, you kind of got written yourself into a corner. So maybe think about what is propelling this story forward to begin with. We talk about inciting incidents all the time. And if we kind of address, we puzzle that out and address it, and all of a sudden there's no more reason to move forward, maybe that incident, maybe that story problem needs to be bigger. Maybe there needs to be more to it. There needs to be more of a puzzle for your character to put together. So you may need to add some complexities. You just may need to add some complexities to the why and the how up front that gives you a longer journey to take your character on. What do you think, Jill?
I would like to add that this is something I was kind of dealing with. I'm writing the Kinsman Chronicles, and it's epic fantasy, and it has like a bazillion point of views. So it's not a normal kind of story because, well, anyway, my point is I've been reading book 3 out loud to my husband, and he hates one of my characters. I don't know why. He hates lots of my characters. It's kind of sad. No, I'm just kidding. But he hates Meow's character, if you know who she is. He just thinks she's schmoopy and she's just all about the same thing all the time. And well, last night I started thinking about, well, what do you mean? And I said, she's always, and I got my notes out. Well, let me look at her page. And she's always been about helping orphan children. That's her thing. I mean, that was her thing in the very first chapter of book 1. Okay. And so now I'm in book 3 and it's still her thing. And my husband's saying, she isn't changing. She isn't growing. I'm like, well, how's she supposed to grow? She's just trying to help people. And we get defensive, like, because I'm stressed and I got to write the book. And so I'm like, blah, blah. But I started thinking about it. I'm like, okay, so I need her to grow. I don't want people to be like, oh, it's her again. And she's just on her crusade to help orphans all the time. So really, I haven't dealt with her. That's telling me that I need to know more about her. So I need to give her something I mean, maybe what it is it's a deep desire to, I mean, her parents died, her sister died, her little sister's off being crazy. I mean, she's lost everyone in her life. So I need to get deeper and think about this girl and think, okay, so maybe her trying to help people is really like this. She's trying to help herself and she's feeling guilty and she needs to just come to this reality and to forgive herself. It wasn't her fault that all these things happened. Something like that, something deeper. And once I figure that out, then I can give a story where that kind of realization can come to her and she can be like, and she can just like grow, you know what I mean? So that's just an example of something, but I mean, it happens to all of us. We all have characters like, oh, this character is just there. But you just kind of got to get deep and get to know them a little better and figure out what's broken. It's kind of that lie thing. But that's an example of what I've been dealing with lately. So.
Well, and to your point, it can be frustrating when a character says they want something or when they say they have a goal, but we don't see them moving closer to it, or we don't see them making choices that take them closer to it. So when you have a character who has a goal, there need to be reasons that they're not moving toward it, or where they are having like experiencing try-fail cycles, like they're trying to achieve their goal, but they keep having these setbacks. So even when you have a character who has something really noble, like you would think that a goal of helping orphan children, who could not admire that, who would not like that character, you still need to make sure that you have them behaving in ways that are true to their goal and that are active, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I the only thing that I'm thinking of, I wanted to kind of echo what Jill said. I don't think you have to stop and go back because you're changing your character, not during your drafting phase. So my answer to that, the end part of this question, should I wait until revisions to worry about my character? Yeah, wait. I mean, make your adjustments like Steph said, pause, take a second, brainstorm, scribble stuff out, whatever works best for you. But go ahead and continue on with your story. This is my advice. Continue on with your story as if you've made those changes. And then when you get to the end, because I mean, maybe you decide in a couple chapters that those changes were not the best changes I could have made. Now, what are you going to do? Go back and start at the beginning one more time? It's just going to take you forever. So my thought would be, like Jill said, whatever you got to do to get to the end, do that. And then you've got a more complete picture of your hero. And you can go back and make sure you've added in all those things necessary to turn them into that character of the second half of your novel or whatever it is. So that would be my thought.
Yeah, I agree. Any other thoughts, guys, before we close this out?
No.
All right. Well, great questions, you guys. We're really excited about the prompts and seeing you guys interact with each other and be creative. So we will see you around the blog.
See you later.